what I've been doing in Asia, my charity projects, as well as my community-based project as a keynote speaker. Well, in my mind, I thought, well, this is just a conversation. So I just say yes. And when I saw the EDM that came out, and I had a shock. And then I realized that everyone is going to be as a speaker or a panelist, specialist, or they are, they're specialists in their field. They talk about their own role. And then I'm talking about a hobby. I'm totally out of fish out of water here, right? So rather than backing up, I tell myself that I should have known better that anything that extraordinary people do, they really do it in a very brilliant and extraordinary way. So I just kind of never thought about it, right? And I thought it was just a conversation. They never have a conversation. They will have an extraordinary conversation. And it's in the title. So I was the one who was falling asleep when I was invited. So I tried, right? So what you're going to have today from me is a sharing that's very different, a sharing that comes not because I'm a specialist in this field or I'm a role expert, but more so from my angle as a human being, somebody who has through my career had a really good ride and distill everything that I do to say that I want to be kind, I want to do good, and this must be active, and I want to nurture the human spirit, because it's how I became quite or very good in what I do, because somebody nurtured me. They not only nurture me as a task professional, but they nurtured my spirit, so I became strong and brave. And then as I get into progress, right, I realized that collaboration, inclusion, as well as co-solutioning are important factors to put the whole thing together. So I'll start a little bit from here. So just to give you a little bit background on myself, which I'm supposed to do, and then give a little bit sharing on what I was doing in Asia, running around in the mountains, and then about my community project here in Singapore. So in my day job, right, I'm actually a finance person, very boring, in private equity, running companies. And we go around telling people on compliance, best practices, putting in commercial frameworks, costing and business models, and at the end of the day, it distills into profit. But on the side, right, what I do is I have a hobby, or I call it a hobby or something I really enjoy doing, which I believe that while we do all this, while we're technically trained to be very good at what we are, I think we need to make a positive contribution to the global ecosystem, especially coming from Singapore. We're a very small nation. In my day job of private equity and finance related work, we always look at global businesses, macroeconomics, and Singapore is able to get great impact, great economic returns because we look at it from a global system. So therefore, what I need to do, I need to try to contribute positively back to the global ecosystem. This was something that was very forerunning in the way I behave in my hobby, right? And then I feel that a lot of my hobbies so-called ended up as charities or social enterprises. And I need to engage and continue to uphold commercial best practices. I cannot just think that because I want to help the poor, and then I just let everything fall apart. So therefore, I kind of need to continue to engage and uphold commercial best practices within the framework that's allowable without too much constraining or burdening the system. And then I quickly realized that it has to be collaborative and inclusive because you now don't have a choice. From the old days, you just hire the best and the brightest. But when you begin to do things that are, that has got a common good, sometimes you don't have very much of a choice. You need to collaborate and you work with what you have. And then eventually you move away from a dollar impact because what you're working with is a very mixed bag. It's not just about dollar, and more often than not, it does not translate into immediate profits. So you need to recalibrate for impact. So therefore, my hobby hopefully is the cream that rises on top of my day job, something that offers a different perspective. Okay. And when I got started, right, the easiest way to migrate into is education. because a lot of the projects or places that I visit are very poor. They're in the mountains and they're relatively off the beaten track. And coming from a very homogeneous, almost a homogeneous country like Singapore, where we don't have high mountains, deep seas, we don't have valleys, and it's pretty flat everything, landscape wise, and even culturally, we don't have refugees, we don't have people from war or whatever. So I thought that I'll pick projects that are slightly agey and they're very off the beaten track. So I've done kindergarten orphanage in China, in Yunnan, post-earthquake in the 90s. I worked with children who are impacted by HIV in Henan, where they sold blood. I worked in Cambodia on a project on anti-child trafficking, where we picked up the really lost cause cases where most NGOs has just given up because they're just repeat offenders. So we decided to pick them up, right, and do something about them. And lastly, in Nepal, which I'm still actively involved today, we did post-earthquake rebuilding. And I work closely with 2 children's home and a boarding school. The boarding school is actually at the border of Tibet. So if you look across, you can actually see the mountain of Tibet, which is quite nice. And these children homes are run by Tibetan refugees. And if to put it in a context as a political overlay, that's pretty sensitive, and they don't get funded in the local community. So every project has a twist, a little bit edgy, and they don't fit the norm. So it takes a little bit more effort. And I have to say that I've been very blessed, because a lot of friends, family, colleagues, they all came on board, not being worried about that non-conformist idea, but looking at the underlying good of the project. So these are the projects that I've been working on, and still working on them. But as I grew older and I get towards retirement, I began to think about the homecoming. So, while I wanted to come home and I want to do something for Singapore. But through my participation and the advisory boards in the school, it's very hard to do an education project because Singapore is very well endowed. Our government does its best. And I put my hand to my heart to say that we have the best government, actually, after seeing a lot of corruption and waste and inefficient use of funds, and also poor allocation of funds. Well, back to a country where education is very well taken care of, and a lot of commercial landscape are very well laid out. So what do I do in such an affluent country like Singapore? If I want to do something, what do I do? And what struck me a lot was when I was in the mountains, I see a lot of environmental damage. I see landslides, I see, flood, I see drought, I see like through earthquakes and collapse of buildings and dams, and and bad crops, and pest infested crops. So I see a lot of environmental damage, and a lot of this damage was created by affluent people in affluent countries overconsumed, and but we don't see where our food came from, and we don't see the environmental damage. So I felt that being in such affluent Singapore, we need to do something for the environment. And in this time when I come home, it's not for education, it's for environment. So something that I kind of got my head around. And while all this were happening right through my years, right, I saw a changing commercial landscape as well. I saw things that I did not believe. Like, I run a bunch of hospitality assets, hotels, very nice brands. And then when I see the rising of Airbnb, I shoved it off. I did not believe. I said, how can you have a hospitality business from no assets, no license, and a bunch of hopscotch people coming together? But that was proven wrong. Airbnb became very powerful. And the same with Uber. When I saw Uber, I said, that cannot be right. They have no taxi license, and the drivers are not insured, and how are they going to coordinate themselves? It's not going to work. But lo and behold, it worked. It worked very well, and we have Grab, like with, So the shared economy also was another overlay. As we say, we continue to learn, right? And I realized that there's actually things which I wouldn't call excess or inefficiencies, but it's just lying around because of way businesses are conducted. There will always be some of these resources that are accessed in a good way. So how do we do an overlay like an Airbnb or Uber without having to build more infrastructure, use more cement, or get more cars and buy more steel and cause more damage? So how is that a way to regroup? So in my homecoming, I realized I need to have something that can have a call to action, and I can optimize current existing assets. So it's a call to action with legs to run. And it cannot be a message like an environmental message that goes missing in action, just to have propaganda, you know, but it must be something that has got legs. It must run. It must be a message in action and not a missing in action. Both are MIAs, you know, and it must leverage on current resources. So I'm not going to build things again, right? Build factories, whatever. I'm not going to do that. I must be able to unlock existing resources. And eventually I realized that it has to be a collaborative and inclusive model to give the impact I needed. So while all this was forming in my mind, I came across, first it must be a product, it must legs to run, you know, and it must be collaborative, inclusive. What came about was a message in action, the legs to run, a product, and it's a product called Enjoy. If you read Mandarin, right, it's actually from the joy that we give away to people to use. And then we, you know, happiness, because 喜悦, delight, joy, that we translated into wash and happy. And a product called Enjoy, which is a combination of enjoy, enzyme and enjoy. And it's a multi-purpose environmental cleaning product. So eventually it came to a product that looks in a recycled bottle. And we started to build the ecosystem. And I didn't want to do something that like, you know, traditional, my day job would call me to write a business plan, to submit it to government for grants, you know, try to get investors, lease something, build, hire, have departments, you know, all that the traditional way. But I decided to dismantle it. And then it comes about something like that. All right, where now instead of shareholders, we have stakeholders, right? Where stakeholders coming in, and they come together because there is a catalyst, which will also serve as an enabler and a facilitator. So it comes an ecosystem like that, where we get branding and marketing by putting out the product in makerspace, working with online influencers and trainers who are already good in what they are doing, carry out workshops in schools, the RCs, corporates. So I do a lot of lunchtime talks with companies, you know, big companies who jump on board, and also private social engagements to bring the branding out. Because when this got started, right, a cleaning product, it requires a lot of test marketing, and you need to do the product market fit. So instead of getting a department, getting a lab, getting user experience, hiring a testing branding company, right? We now collaborated with cleaning companies, weekend markets, store holders, as well as hawker centers and food courts. So there are about 100 of these individuals or parties in the program, and they serve as the early adopters and the champion. So while doing all this, right, it creates a lot of delight, a lot of empathy, and a lot of friendship among them. And they give a lot of feedback, and this feedback from real users, they use it all the time, right? They get a product every month. So, and they get it for free. So it also creates a lot of what I call belief in good. People don't believe that they could get good things for free for a long time. And so, you know, I like to cultivate that and see the delight in them. At the same time, rather than just producing it all myself, then I start to put in the production value chain together. So we had fruit juice vendors who will give us the PUs. With banks, spas with a lot of mineral water bottles, it's very easy. So, you know, we recycle the plastics. And then I work with social enterprises, you know, where they have trainers and they have, you know, beneficiaries that they can work with to do the production. So through that, right, they will make the profit, the money, and they will also get a lot of raw materials. Because every time when I do my branding and marketing workshops, I would tell the schools or the RCs and corporates that they could buy from these social enterprises X number of bottles, and they will make a donation of X packet of sugar. So at the same time, right, you know, we put up an online sale platform, and when we get sales, we buy from the social enterprise and we put it out. So they get the money as well. And there's some independent outlets, food outlets or retail outlets that also came on board. They have space. They say, all you need is a box. Okay, I'll give you a space box, you know, a space for a box, and you put it out and you sell, and we will collect the proceeds from you. And then, you know, quite regularly, we get some corporate orders as well, and we put the order through back to the social enterprise. So as such, right, we built what I call a collaborative ecosystem where we co-solution, each one putting out its own area of expertise. We leverage on what they could. It's almost like not much skin off their back. It's just there, and how can we make whatever they have in a more optimized way? And all of them are stakeholders, so they're not shareholders, right? So we also do away with the big corporate exercise of shareholders meeting, corporation, and all that, and all that charter and all that. So everybody comes in, and they all dance around the maypole. Well, you know, and we just see how we can keep growing the circle bigger, so the circle gets bigger and bigger. So I think at the end, quoting Mr. Eric Chua, right, we would say, hopefully this will be a better Singapore and better for everyone as we all jump into a system like that, you know. So I think this is what yeah, that I have to share, and I'll leave it here as a takeaway for everyone. So I'll finish my presentation here. Well, thank you.